Germany. Land of fairy tale castles. Land of half-timbered villages. Land of traditions and enchanted forests. There's a country in the heart of Europe that touches 9 borders, more than any other on the continent. A country that within a single lifetime was leveled to the ground, cut in two by a wall, and rebuilt piece by piece until it became Europe's largest economy. The world thinks it knows this place for its beer, for its engines, but those are only the cover of the book. This is Germany. A land that seen from far away is almost a tilted plain. It rises slowly from north to south. It starts at sea level, between the beaches of the Baltic and the North Sea. Crosses hills covered in woods, and ends against the wall of the Bavarian Alps, where the Zugspitze nearly touches 3,000 meters, or almost 10,000 feet. On this tilted plain, the rivers flow almost all toward the north, and one of them made history. The Rhine has been Europe's highway for 2,000 years. The Romans already sailed up it with their ships, and today it's still the busiest river on the continent. Along its valley, one after another come vineyards clinging to the slopes, cliffs plunging straight into the water, and countless legends. But it's by lifting your eyes from the rivers that you truly understand this country. Because on almost every height in Germany, there's a castle. There are around 25,000 of them, more than in any other country in the world. And that's no accident. In fact, the reason tells half of German history. For centuries, a united Germany never existed. Until 1871, there was a mosaic of kingdoms, principalities, and free cities. And every lord had to defend his lands from his neighbor, control the roads, and collect tolls from anyone passing through. And to do all that, a fortress was needed. That ancient fragmentation can still be felt in everyday life. And you can sense it even when ordering a drink. Because there isn't one single German beer, there are about 100. In Cologne, for example, they drink Kölsch, in Düsseldorf Altbier, and in Bavaria Weissbier. And ordering the local beer is a way, almost without meaning to, of understanding which side of the river you're standing on. But with bread, the same thing happens, maybe even more so. The registered varieties are more than 3,000, because every region, for centuries, baked with the grains its own soil managed to give. A culture so deeply rooted that UNESCO recognized it as Heritage of Humanity. Because here, traditions aren't a memory, they're an appointment. And the most anticipated appointment arrives in December. The squares fill up with little wooden houses, warm lights, and the scent of spices and mulled wine. Christmas markets were born right here, more than 600 years ago, and they're not a postcard for tourists at all. They're the moment when all German cities truly find each other again. Then, the lights go out, the square's empty, and the country returns to what it does best. Because Germany is also the homeland of some of the greatest car manufacturers in the world. And it's no surprise that to let these cars run, the country built roads made to measure. The Autobahn are highways where on certain stretches, the speed limit simply doesn't exist. Up to here, though, we've looked at this nation from far away, with its numbers and its virtues. But no country tells its story that way. It's told through its squares, its alleys, and the mountains you see at the end of the streets. And the first of these squares lies to the south, with the Alps on the horizon in the city that is the heart of Bavaria. Munich. Every day at 11 o'clock sharp, an entire square lifts its head. On the town hall tower, 2 rows of windows swing open and 32 wooden figures begin to turn. Knights in a tournament and dancers. A small theater suspended above the crowd. It's the Glockenspiel, Munich's great carillon. The town hall looks out over Marienplatz, which is the city's main square, where the cobbled alleys converge, along with elegant palaces and the constant flow of people. A few steps from the center, the Englischer Garten opens up. It's a park so large, it outsizes some principalities, and people often go there to ride the wave of a small river, as if they were surfers at the seaside. And then there's the residence, which is the palace of the kings of Bavaria, with its gilded halls that tell centuries of crown. It was right here that Ludwig II lived, the dreamer king who couldn't stand anything about court life. He preferred legends, music, and solitude. And to find them, he had a castle built all his own in the middle of the mountains. Neuschwanstein Castle. White towers suspended above a gorge with the Alps behind them and a lake at their feet. Neuschwanstein isn't a real medieval castle. It's the whim of Ludwig II, the shy king who wanted to live inside a fairy tale, and it was built only 150 years ago. You get there on foot, climbing for about half an hour through the woods, or by carriage, the way it was once done. Inside, the halls display thrones, paintings, and an artificial grotto the king wanted. But the finest view is taken from outside, from the Marienbrücke bridge, suspended over the gorge right in front of the towers. The king lived in the castle for barely 172 days, then died in circumstances never explained, and his private refuge became the most photographed castle in the world. It is also said to have inspired Disney's Sleeping Beauty Castle. And yet the most extraordinary thing about this place, perhaps, isn't the castle, but what surrounds it. It's the mountains, and that's where we climb now. Bavarian Alps. Here, Germany touches the sky. Along its entire southern border, for hundreds of kilometers, the country closes itself against a barrier of rock before crossing into Austria. The Zugspitze, the highest peak in the country, rises to 2,962 meters, or 9,718 feet, and a cable car carries you to the top in 10 minutes. Lower down, though, the landscape softens. There are brilliantly green meadows, dark wooden chalets with flowered balconies, and cows with cowbells that echo through the valleys. In winter, everything is covered in snow, and the villages light up like nativity scenes. In summer, the trails fill with hikers, climbing toward the mountain huts. It's a world of wind, rock, and open space. But among these same mountains hides a place enclosed and sheltered where even noise is forbidden. Lake Königssee. A lake narrow and long, closed in between rock walls that drop straight down into the water. No road passes through here, and to see the lake in its entirety, the only way is to board a boat. And the boats themselves, since 1909, have run only on electric motors so as not to dirty water that's among the purest in all of Germany. You set off in silence and glide between the mountains. Usually halfway through the trip, the boat stops. The boatman takes out a trumpet, plays a few notes toward the rock wall, and waits. And the mountain answers, repeating those same notes, with an echo that bounces from one wall to another. Then you set off again, round a curve of the lake, and on the shore appears a small church with red domes. It's St. Bartholomew at the foot of Mount Lotzman, and there's no other way to reach it except by water. And from this still water of the lake, our journey continues toward a water that instead never stops. Regensburg. The Danube has always embraced Regensburg, and Regensburg returns the favor with a masterpiece. Its stone bridge, built in 1100, is the oldest medieval bridge in Germany. 16 arches that have withstood floods, wars, and 9 centuries of footsteps. It was the model for bridges across half of Europe, studied and copied everywhere. Behind the bridge opens one of the best preserved medieval centers on the continent. There are towers built by wealthy families competing in height, narrow alleys, and the cathedral with its twin spires. The Diet also gathered here, that is, the Parliament of the Old German Empire. But the real power, the power of money and trade, was beating a little further north in another city. Nuremberg. Every new sovereign of the Holy Roman Empire had to hold his first assembly here. And right here, the emperors had their residence, in the Kaiserberg, the imperial castle. It dominates the rooftops from above, and from up there, the gaze embraces the whole old town. Walking here means losing yourself among half-timbered houses with dark beams, sculpted fountains, and mighty walls that still ring the entire historic center. But it's in winter that Nuremberg gives its best. Its square transforms into the most famous Christmas market in the world, the Christkindlesmarkt. Hundreds of wooden stalls light up, and the air fills with the scent of spices and mulled wine. But if Christmas here lasts only a month, not far away there's a village where it never ends. Rothenburg ob der Tauber. Imagine walking inside a medieval postcard, left untouched for 500 years. Towers, walls, stone alleys, and pastel-colored houses that look out onto fairy tale little squares. Rothenburg ob der Tauber is perhaps the most photographed medieval town in Germany, a jewel entirely enclosed within its walls, which even today can be walked step by step along the covered rampart. The most celebrated corner is the Plönlane, a junction of half-timbered houses and towers that seems designed on purpose to enchant. And then, there's the secret that makes this place unique. Here there's a Christmas village that never closes, where among glittering trees and little wooden figures, you breathe the air of the holidays even in the middle of summer. Rothenburg is the Middle Ages rendered to perfection, almost too beautiful to be true. Not far away, there's a city where that same Middle Ages isn't just a postcard, but everyday life, still today. Bamberg. A city unchanged for more than 1,000 years. Not as a museum, though, but as a living city. In the very same houses as always, people still live, work, and stop for a drink. The way they did centuries ago. It's built on 7 hills and it's survived every war. Its historic center is so authentic that it's protected as heritage of humanity. The cathedral dominates from above with its 4 towers, while in the middle of the river, almost suspended over the water, stands the old town hall, decorated with frescoes. Along the riverbank, we find Little Venice. Here, the old fishermen's houses line up, with their gardens sloping all the way down to the water. But let's leave the Middle Ages for now and move toward a city that looks entirely to the future. Stuttgart. A great industrial city, heart of the German automobile, where rows of vines reach almost to the center. In Stuttgart, the hills planted with grapevines surround the buildings, and it's a rare case among the world's metropolises. But this, without a doubt, is the city of engines. Here, two names were born that made automotive history, and their museums, true temples of glass and steel, tell more than a century of speed and ingenuity. Downtown, life flows around the grand boulevards, the elegant squares and the parks that climb gently toward the heights. It's a city that unites the precision of engineering with the gentleness of hill country. And these very hills, moving away from the city, grow ever thicker with trees until they become a forest without end. Black Forest. Do you know why this forest is called black? Because its fir trees grow so dense and tall that they let almost no light filter through. They create a world of shadows and silence that for centuries fed the legends. The Black Forest is a sea of wooded hills, dotted with traditional villages with steep pitched roofs, dark lakes, and hidden waterfalls. Here the cuckoo clock was born, hand-carved during the long winter evenings, with its little bird that marks the hours. And it's also the land of a dessert famous everywhere, the Black Forest cake, born right among these valleys. It's without a doubt a fairy tale landscape, almost magical, that seems to have come out of the Brothers Grimm tales. And in fact, it was this dark wood that inspired the dreamers of Romanticism, whose capital awaits us a little further north. Heidelberg. There's a ruin in Germany that no one ever wanted to rebuild. Heidelberg Castle dominates the city from above, with its red stone wounded by lightning and by wars. But it's exactly like this, incomplete and ruined, that it won everyone over. The Romantic poets climbed up here to watch the sunset set the walls on fire, and they decided that beauty could live even in broken things. Lower down, the Neckar River flows slowly among the dark rooftops, crossed by the old bridge made of pale stone. Germany's oldest university also lives here, which for more than 6 centuries has filled the alleys with students. wrote that he had lost his heart in this city, and he came back 8 times. But the poet had a home of his own far from here, and our journey now goes looking for it. Frankfurt. It's here that the poet Goethe was born. But the true essence of the city today is its skyscrapers. A skyline of glass and steel, unique in all of Germany. They rise above the main river and tell the modern role of Frankfurt, with banks, offices, and great financial institutions. Not by chance, the city has earned itself a nickname, the German Manhattan. At the foot of the towers, though, the historic main square holds on with its old half-timbered houses. That is, with the wooden beams left exposed, rebuilt with patience after the war. It's exactly this contrast that defines the city. On one side, the historic town, on the other, one of the most important financial hearts of Europe. But you only have to leave the city and follow the river for the glass to give way to vineyards and the skyscrapers to a castle. Cochem. The Moselle draws wide, slow curves, and in one of these curves rests Cochem. There are narrow pastel-colored houses, a small harbor, and vineyards so steep they seem to climb on their own. And up there, above everything, stands the Reichsburg. A castle with pointed towers that looks like it stepped out of the Middle Ages. In reality, it's a second life, because the original fortress had been destroyed for centuries, and in the 1800s, an extremely wealthy businessman bought it and rebuilt it out of his own pocket. From the slow water of the Moselle, our journey now continues toward a city that owes even its name to water. Aachen. Here, water tells everything, starting with the name, which means precisely water. From deep in the earth rise boiling springs that exceed 70 degrees Celsius or 158 degrees Fahrenheit, and are among the hottest in Central Europe. The historic center is a weave of alleys, fountains, and cafes, where the air smells of spiced cookies that have been baked here for centuries. Above the rooftops rises the cathedral, with its gilded dome and its eight-sided chapel that shines with ancient mosaics. It's a border city, a step away from Belgium and Holland, where three languages mingle in the streets. But following its river, the three languages fade into one, and the largest city in this whole region appears. Cologne. Two twin towers of dark stone rise for 157 meters, or 515 feet, and can be seen from every point in the city. They're the towers of the cathedral, built specifically to guard a treasure, the golden shrine of the three kings. It arrived in the city almost 900 years ago, and for a treasure like that, a worthy home was needed. It took more than 600 years to finish it. Today, at its feet flows the Rhine, wide and hard-working, loaded with barges carrying goods up and down Europe. And it's the river itself that gives the city its rhythm, between walks along the water, beer halls, and the scent of Kölsch, the pale beer you can only drink here. But a little further south, the Rhine changes character and leaves the plains behind. Rhine Valley. Past Cologne, the Rhine narrows. The banks rise, grow steep, and for 65 kilometers, or 40 miles, the river runs through a gorge where every height has its castle. There are more than 40 of them, one after another, among terraced vineyards clinging to the slopes. For centuries, this was Europe's road, and the castles served to collect tolls from the ships passing through. Here there's also the Lorelei, the crag that plunges into the river for 132 meters, or 433 feet, at the narrowest and most dangerous point. The legend tells of a mermaid who, singing from the summit, actually made sailors shipwreck, bewitching them. What made all of this immortal was a poem, and the poet who wrote it was born in a city a little further downstream. Düsseldorf. A city that always looks ahead. It's the capital of German fashion, elegant and lively, with the beer halls of the old town that every evening fill up with people. On the Königsallee, the boulevard with the canal running down the middle, the most elegant shop windows in Germany go on parade. And in the old harbor, something unique happened. The buildings stopped standing straight. The three towers designed by the architect Frank Gehry bend, sway and mirror one another like inhabited sculptures. All around, the old warehouses have become design studios and galleries, watched over by the television tower, 240 meters, or 787 feet tall. Heading now toward the North Sea, the modern vanishes and is replaced by ancient bricks in stories from other times. Bremen. This is the Böttcherstrasse, 100 meters of street transformed into a vision. In the 1920s, a wealthy coffee merchant bought this alley and entrusted it to artists and architects so they could reinvent it from top to bottom. What came out was something never seen before, with facades of curved brick, sculptures in bricks that look like flames. But Bremen is famous above all for the town musicians of Bremen, from the very famous brothers Grimm fairy tale. Their bronze statue next to the town hall is the symbol of the city. The whole city seems to live inside a fairy tale anyway, thanks also to the medieval squares, the pointed roofs, and the characteristic crooked alleys. But fairy tales in Germany certainly don't end here, and following them south, we reach a village in the Harz Mountains. Wernigerode. A village that looks like the cover of a fairy tale book. And the reason is immediately clear. There are gray roofs, walls that follow the rock, and a castle that emerges from the woods with its pointed towers. Below the town is a weave of colorful half-timbered houses with the town hall and its twin spires that looks like it's made of gingerbread. Every house has decorated beams, carved dates, and flowers in the windows. It's one of the most photographed villages in northern Germany, and yet it keeps a quiet air of the provinces. From its little station, then, departs a journey on a small steam train that climbs curve after curve toward a mountain full of stories. Harz Mountains. The steam train labors among the fir trees, and at the end of the climb, at 1,141 meters, or 3,743 feet, there's the Brocken, the highest peak in northern Germany. It's a mountain almost always wrapped in fog for 300 days a year. Maybe that's why one of the most famous legends in Germany was born here. It's said, in fact, that on Walpurgis night between the 30th of April and the 1st of May, witches from all over the country climb up here to gather in a great Sabbath, waiting for spring. Even Goethe set a scene of his Faust here. But this mountain isn't only legend. All around stretch deep woods, gorges, streams, and ancient mines. It's the wild and bewitched heart of the country. Leipzig. Here is where Germany changes pace. In the old cotton factories today, hundreds of artists work, and the neighborhoods fill with galleries, music, and cafes. Many call it the New Berlin, and this energy comes from far back. It was in the Church of St. Nicholas that in 1989, prayers became peaceful marches and helped bring down the wall without firing a single shot. And even earlier, in the Church of St. Thomas, Johann Sebastian Bach played the organ for 27 years and composed his greatest works here. His music still resounds today, sung by the choir he himself directed. From this city of music, the journey now rises toward the most lavish of them all, where kings made beauty into a spectacle. Dresden. They called it the Florence on the Elbe for its Baroque palaces looking out over the river. Here the kings of Saxony built a number of marvels. Some examples are the Swinger, with its fountains and galleries, or the Semperoper, which is the most sumptuous opera house in Germany. Then on one night in 1945, the bombs erased everything. The Frauenkirche, which is the Great Dome Church, remained a heap of rubble for 50 years. But the citizens didn't give up. And stone by stone, they rebuilt it, reusing the original blocks blackened by fire. Today, its dome rises again, and the dark stones among the pale ones tell the wound and the rebirth together. A short distance from the city, we then find a landscape with a curious name. Saxon, Switzerland National Park. Despite its name, this place has nothing to do with Switzerland. Its name was invented by two Swiss painters from the Dresden Academy because standing before these rocks, they felt homesick for their own mountains. Here, the landscape is very different from the classic Germany. We find sandstone towers rising from the woods like fingers of stone above the valley carved by the Elbe. The most famous spot is the Bastei, a stone bridge suspended among the pinnacles at nearly 200 meters, or 656 feet above the river. These rocks carry the scars of time, but no place carries as many as the German capital. Berlin. A city that learned how to be reborn. The Brandenburg Gate, which for 28 years looked out at a wall, today looks out at a square full of life. Of the wall, the longest stretch remains, transformed into an open-air gallery, the East Side Gallery, where artists from all over the world have painted freedom. In the heart of the city, an entire island on the river hosts 5 great museums. Here we find everything, from the treasures of ancient Egypt to the paintings of the German Romantics. And above everything rises the television tower, 368 meters or 1,207 feet tall, visible from every neighborhood. But Berlin doesn't live on history alone. It's a young and rebellious city where by day you lose yourself in the parks and the markets, while by night there's a life that knows no hours. When summer arrives, Berliners have a secret because they all escape to their sea. Rügen Island. This is Berlin's sea. For more than a century, when the heat arrives, the capital empties, and the island fills up. The reason is easy to understand. There are great cliffs of brilliant white chalk that plunge into the Baltic from over 100 meters, with the so-called King's Chair as their most celebrated point. Above the cliffs grow ancient beech forests, protected as heritage of humanity, and the contrast between the colors is almost unreal. The green of the woods, the white of the chalk, and the blue of the sea heighten each other. Along the coast, beaches of pale sand alternate with seaside villages, with villas from other times and piers over the water. But the white of the sand and the cliffs isn't the only dominant color on the German Baltic. On the contrary, not far away, entire cities take on the color of red brick. Hamburg. It was nicknamed the Gateway to the World, and its port is the largest in Germany. A horizon of cranes, containers, and ships that depart for every continent. It's a city of water, laced with canals, and it has around 2,500 bridges, more than Venice and Amsterdam combined. In the Speicherstadt, which means city of warehouses, the red brick buildings mirror themselves in the canals, and it's here that coffee, spices, and carpets from half the world were once stored. And right on top of one of those old warehouses grew the Elbphilharmonie, which is the concert hall with the wave-shaped glass facade, become in just a few years the new symbol of the city. From its terrace, the gaze embraces the entire port. And it's right here in this port that our journey ends. From here, the Elbe runs toward the sea, and beyond that sea, Germany ends. New coasts, new cities, new stories continue beyond the horizon. But this is no longer part of our story. A new journey awaits us elsewhere. Thank you for watching.